Welcome back to Mrs. Ake's Science Classroom, and today we're outside again because I just wanted to make a quick observation. Last class we talked about the things that happen to our environment during this time of year, and we went outside and we looked at the trees and how the leaves were turning colors, and we talked about the changes that were occurring within the plants around us because of the temperature. And I wanted to go back outside today and look at that same tree. This is the tree right behind me, the giant tree in my front yard. And last time we were out here, it had all these different colored leaves on it that were yellow and orange, and now the leaves are gone. So if you remember, we talked about that the plants are dormant, that these trees are dormant in the winter, and it's how that they survive the cold temperatures. Today, we're going to talk about the animals in Kansas and how they manage to deal with the cold here in Kansas. So I want to go over our vocabulary words first. I'm going to change my screen. So we're going to do our vocabulary words first because they're really pretty pertinent to they're really important to what we're learning today. Let's see if I can get this started. Okay, so we've got vocabulary. And our first vocabulary word is adapt. So I want you to think about what it means to adapt. Just, think about that really quick. You have some ideas, go ahead and share them. So what I have up here is adapt is animals will change their behavior and or appearances to be able to stay in their habitat and live during the changes that are occurring in their environment. I left off some words. I want you to write down, kind of in your own words, what adapt means, something that can help you remember what that word means. And then look at my pictures. I love these pictures. I have a fox, and he's all fluffy and laying in the snow. And I have a fox, and he's pretty skinny looking, sitting in front of some green grass. And so the differences between the two, the difference is that one has to deal with the cold weather, and one it's warm, it's nice outside. And so to adapt, this fox has gotten a thicker coat. Like Mrs. Ake, I adapted for the cold outside. Look at this, I got my coat on too. So I don't like to be cold, so I adapt. When I go outside, I change my appearance and I change the way that I dress to deal with the cold weather. And I bet some of you guys do too. So take the hood off. The next one we have is hibernation, and I think most of you have probably heard of hibernation. So just kind of think about that. If you have some ideas, you could share them. And what I have down here is hibernation is when normal workings in an animal's body is paused or slowed down for a period of time, like a deep sleep. And so I have a picture of some bears because everybody, when we think about hibernating, I think we generally think about bears. I also have little chipmunk ground squirrel thing over here, and he's got some nuts stored because, well, it's nice to have some food in there in case you wake up and you're hungry during a long winter. And I have bats because we actually have bats that do hibernate here in Kansas, which I think is really interesting. And here they have them hibernating probably inside of a cave. That's what it looks like to me. Generally in Kansas, they're going to hibernate in structures like old barns and attics and stuff. And just so everyone knows, even though lots of people are scared of bats, bats are really amazing creatures, and we need them because they eat lots and lots of insects. In fact, one of the things that they love to eat is mosquitoes, and Mrs. Ake loves the fact that they love to eat mosquitoes because I don't like mosquitoes. They ruin my summer. So I really like bats. And then we have migrate. So I want you to think about migrate. Does anybody know what it means to migrate or what a migration is? And then I have, it is to find a different home due to changes in the animal's habitat. And I would say that it's more of a change. Some animals, because they can't deal with severe colds or they can't deal with it being too hot, instead of changing their behavior or changing their appearance, they leave. They also, some animals have to leave because their food source just it's not plentiful enough. And so here I have geese, and I think most people have seen geese flying over and huge, like the huge V's. That's a really interesting process. maybe we'll get to talk about that another time. And then I have the monarch butterflies, which are just, it's a beautiful migration when you see them coming through, and they do come through Kansas. So those are some of our key words that we're going to be talking about today. Now we're going to watch this video over winter adaptations. So I'll put that up there for you guys.
My name is Sarah Armour, and I study the science of natural and environmental systems at Cornell University. Winter is kind of harsh. You have lots and lots of snow. Everything's super cold. Any water that's available is going to be completely frozen, and food and shelter is really hard to find. Migration is an animal behavior that many of us are very familiar with, where all of the animals in a population move to a warmer climate to avoid the worst of winter. Hibernation is where animals become dormant or inactive during the coldest months, where the hibernating animals use way less energy and can stay cozy, hidden, and safe throughout the winter. So why would some animals want to sleep through the winter? If you're an animal that eats insects, winter weather makes it really hard to find food because insects definitely are not active in cold weather. And if you are an animal that eats plants, winter is a difficult time to get food because most plants are covered in snow. Mammals grow thick fur coats in preparation for winter, and this helps them conserve heat during the coldest months. Many cold climate mammals have blubber, like polar bears and seals, as well as some birds, like penguins. The blubber storage also is a way for animals to have a supply of energy to use during the winter when food is more scarce. One very good way of keeping warm is to minimize the amount of heat that is lost by minimizing body surface area. Cold climate animals do this by having compact and rather squat body forms with small, stout limbs, ears, and tails. The snowshoe hare faces the challenge of sinking into the deep snow as it hops along. To combat this challenge, the hare has very wide hind feet that act as snowshoes to redistribute weight so that they remain above the snow. Polar bears, lynx, mountain lions, and bobcats also have very wide feet. Some animals change color in the winter to help them blend in with their surroundings. This camouflage helps prey hide from their predators, and it helps predators keep out of sight from their prey. Think of some examples of animals you might see as winter approaches and throughout the coldest months. You might see some fluffy birds and puffed up squirrels with thick coats to keep them warm. Maybe if you're really observant, you can see the tracks of animals that are active through the winter. Even in your own backyard, it's easy to see how animals have adapted to winter. All you have to do to see these cool winter adaptations is look around.
Okay. So I want you to think about the things that are happening right now outside in your world. So what are some of the things that are happening with our climate? We talked about this last time in our last class session when we talked about the plants and how they were going dormant. Just think about it. Is it getting warmer outside? Is it getting colder? I want you to think about how it affects animals, all animals. How does it affect us? What do we as humans do to adapt to the changes that are going on in our environment? Because with every season we have a different change. And Mrs. 8 talked about the one where I have my big fluffy coat on. We have to deal with it too. We have different methods, and some of them I don't think we even think about anymore because it's so easy for us to deal with, like the food and because in the winter our food doesn't grow either. So and how does it affect the animals outside? Do you have pets that you guys have to like create different environments for them, that you have to, like, we have a puppy outside, and she has a special doghouse, and it's all like insulated with warm stuff so that she can stay warm when it gets cold. So there's some things that you're probably doing if you have animals that you're taking care of. And I want you to just think about the changes that you're seeing in the animals in your environment. And then I'd like you to write those down in your, some of those things down in your science journal. And I want you to try and think, are they adapting? Now the animals that we're taking care of, that's not an adaptation. We're kind of interfering with how nature would normally do it. But I want you to think about like maybe some squirrels. Have you seen some squirrels? The foxes. How many snakes do you see in the winter? What do you think's going on with those snakes here in Kansas? So I want you to think about the things that you have observed. And then I want you outside in our environment, the things that you have observed recently. And I want you to write them down in your science journal. So we talked about some of the things, some of the different adaptations. So we talked about adapting, we talked about hibernating, and we talked about migrating. And so you guys have this little worksheet, and it has at the top, this is Mrs. X already kind of worked hers out so that I can keep talking while you guys are working. And then it has little animals at the top, and I already cut mine out and I colored it. I love to color. You don't have to color it if you don't want to. So I want you to, but I do want you to cut out the square, this square here, and I want you to glue it into your science journal. And then you're going to take the little animals. Again, I colored mine because I like to color. You don't have to. And I want you to find the places that these little animals would most likely spend the winter. What are they going to do to manage the change in their environment? So the bunny, I would probably put the bunny in a burrow, And now this one, he's a little tricky. I don't know if you know, he's a snake, obviously. You know he's a snake. But I don't know if you know what snakes do in the winter. Mrs. Ake was really, really surprised last fall, like about this time actually. We were going to have a bonfire and we went out and we pulled some tree bark off of an old dead tree. And under the tree bark, excuse me, was a bunch of snakes. They had wiggled in between the loose tree bark and that tree. And they did that because the tree was decomposing, it was rotting. And when wood rots, it puts off heat. And so they were actually using the heat from that decomposing tree to help them stay warm. And that's where they were planning on staying the winter. And I interrupted what had started out as their winter sleep. I felt really bad about that. Okay, not too bad because I'm not a very big fan of snakes. I'm sorry. We also have the bat. We talked about this. And we talked about how here in Kansas, they actually sleep like this, upside down. Here in Kansas, that most of them, we don't have a lot of caves, but if they had a cave, that would be their preferred place to spend the winter because caves stay a perfect temperature all the time. Very interesting. And then we have a squirrel. I made mine a red squirrel. Most of ours here are more of a brownish color, but I think, I like this color better. And some of them do have a more red tint to them. And then we have a goose. And so each of these have a specific place they would be. This guy here, we know that we talked about the V's, the flying V's and stuff. So what I want you to do on this worksheet is I want you to find their winter home and I want you to glue them in there. So this is for your science journal, and this is a activity that you're going to do on your own. So we're going to do also going to do a quick review on, do you understand? Mrs. Ake wants to know if you understand everything that we talked about today. And this is going to be, it's just a worksheet. I already put my name at the top. And so we're going to do the first one together. And the first one says snakes. And then I need to go through here and say, do snakes hibernate? Do they migrate or do they adapt? And we talked about this, and snakes actually hibernate. They do a thing called brumate, but for all intents and purposes, it's a type of hibernation. So snakes hibernate. And I want you to go through here and see if you can kind of figure out what each of these do. Do rabbits hibernate, migrate, or adapt? And think about that video we watched because that's going to help you. That's got some of those answers. And you can always go back and rewatch it because this is a recording, so you have that ability to go back and rewatch. If you're confused. We have chipmunks, bats, goose, deer, and squirrels. And some of these are going to be you've observed it. So you should have observed it in the videos and talking about. I don't think that we actually talked about deer in the video or in the lesson. So if you think about that, if you've ever seen a deer in the winter, generally deer don't sleep all winter long. So they're still awake and up and moving. So they're going to their, and they don't generally leave this area of Kansas. They generally stay here and they find the things they need to eat and they do what they need to do to survive in this environment. So is that going to be hibernate, migrate, or adapt? So anyway, that is what our lesson was about. Today was about how the animals in Kansas handle the changes in our environment, just like we talked about trees and plants last class period, and how that they go dormant, and that's how their system deals with the super cold weather. They preserve their energy, their food sources, so they can make it through a super cold winter where they don't get enough light and water. And now we're talking about how animals deal with changes in their environment and what they need to do so that they can survive and not just survive, but thrive and reproduce and make more of themselves. So we've had a really great class session. Remember to finish this sheet and put it in your science journal for me to look at. And thank you for taking the time to be here today. Have a great afternoon.